move on. And we're going to be asking this: is it fair to convict parents for their children's crimes? Give us a call on this. 0207 862 2222 is the number, and we'll speak to you in just a moment. The reason we're asking this is because a mother in the US has been found guilty of involuntary manslaughter after her son went on a mass shooting spree at a school in Michigan back in 2021. Jennifer Crumbley was convicted in court yesterday after her husband James her husband James is facing a separate trial on the same charges. Now, the pair allowed their son, who had mental health issues, access to a gun which he went on to use in the shooting. The killer's mum spoke in court yesterday.
I don't think I'm a failure as a parent, but at that time, I guess I felt bad that Ethan was sad at those things, and I guess I don't know, I just felt like I failed somewhere. Of course, I look back after this all happened, and I've asked myself if I would have done anything differently, and I wouldn't have.
If you could change what happened, would you?
Oh, absolutely. I wish he would have killed us instead.
OK, so we're asking, was it right to convict her, I suppose? Should all parents be punished if their children commit a crime? We sort of wind it out past this case and look more locally to the UK and think, is it acceptable to hold a parent wholly to account for the actions of their children? Wilfred?
Definitely yes. I believe that if your child commits a crime under the age of 18, you as a parent have to be able to take some sort of responsibility, because that child has become the personality that they are based on your influence. And one of the things that really does get me angry now is that we now live in a society where parents are not taking responsibility. They're blaming the government, they're blaming the state, they're blaming other people. But if you bring a child into this world, you have to accept that this child is going to turn out either good or bad based on the influence, the work that you put in.
Aren't there occasions where a child is just born bad?
Nobody is born bad. And even if the child has a problem, as a parent, it is your responsibility to go and seek help.
What if the child is born a psychopath?
But all I'm trying to, even if they're born a psychopath, if you could see that there's a problem, as a parent, it's your job to go and get help. I'm not going to let parents off here.
OK, what if there is a situation where there is a child who has a mental health issue, the parents have acknowledged the mental health issue, went to seek medical help, is going through that process, the child then commits a crime. Well, is the parent then responsible?
No. If you as a parent has gone out of your way and you've gone to seek help and you've been let down, well, therefore, that parent has a right to sort of blame the people that they've gone and got help for. But I think we need to focus on the fact that we live in a society now where parents are not taking responsibility for the things that their children do. Going out and buying a 15-year-old kid guns, that is a height of stupidity.
Thankfully, it doesn't happen very much in this country, but we do have a knife crime problem.
Exactly, or people allowing their children to go and buy knives, or allowing their children to do things and not monitoring to them, allowing them to go to parties without finding whose party you're going to go to. Have you got... With my children, when they wanted to go to parties, who's the person? What's the telephone number? I need every single rule to know that actually...
Wilfred, just stop you there.
Your children,
no, it's not a rant. You're passionate, it's great, but you have children that clearly have a dialogue and an open dialogue with you, which is fantastic. Occasionally, children fall into the wrong group of friends. They start to climb down.
As a parent, you know that. That's what I would do. I'd be very conscious at a certain age that if you're not on top of it, they could fall into the wrong group. So as a parent, that's what you've got to do, monitor. Okay. And I just think that in our society, people tend to leave it to the kids, leave it to them. No, you've got to make sure to keep them on the straight and narrow, especially when they're pre-teenagers. You've got to be pretty tough.
Saleyha, do you think it's possible to know what all children are doing at all times?
No, and I think there is some degree of what I agree with you, Wilfred, but not on every case. And I think that this has got to be a case by case. As you were speaking, I was thinking of, yes, there is a cohort of parents who are not monitoring, their children appropriately. But I'm thinking about, as you were speaking, I was thinking about the single mothers maybe who are working 2 or 3 jobs a week to make ends meet in this climate of where everyone is struggling, where it is not by choice that they are not able to be at home as often as they want to be there when the child comes home from school. There's going to be plenty of times when they are not aware of who their child is speaking to. They may not have any siblings. They are also possibly living in temporary accommodation, waiting for permanent housing, living in, awful hostels, etc., exposed to all sorts of things where whilst parents who are struggling to make ends meet might be single parents who will not be able to have a 24/7 eye on their child, and it's those kids that are often that stand out as potential prey for anyone that might want to groom them into violence, to persuade them to carry out horrendous attacks. I work in A&E. I see the consequences of violence day in, day out. It is heartbreaking. A child, and when I see a victim of knife crime, horrendous violence here in the UK, I think of two victims. I think of the child that's conducted it, because they are children at the end of the day. Some very, very young people. I mean, what has happened to that child that has led them to that? And often the parents are horrified and horrendous and rushing in, exhausted from a job that they can't afford to lose. So there are victims across the board. So I think a blanket everyone is going to be wrong. I think it has to be case by case.
What do you think on this at home? 0207 862 2222 is the number for your view. I'd love to hear from you. Saleyha, you brought up quite a few times the single parent scenario. Yeah. I actually look at this and think, OK, if we start convicting parents for the actions of their children's crimes, it might mean that we see less single parenting, divorced parents certainly, but less single parenting, because it would encourage the other parent, whether it be the mother or the father, to hang around to make sure enough is being done to ensure that that child is going to be a fully functioning member of society. So it might help society in the long run.
But there's all sorts of reasons why a child might be being brought up by a single parent. They might just not be a mother figure or a father figure. There are many, many reasons. So that's why I'm saying that a blanket across the board is just not going... I think you'd end up seeing some of the most vulnerable sections of society paying the brunt of this.
Could I just come in here, because I think this single parent issue is what we should be actually focusing on, because I can't imagine how tough it must be if you're a mother having to bring up boys, especially. Half of you want to be sort of kind and nurturing, and the other half of you need to be disciplined. But what we need to be able to clearly actually say to everybody is that, and even if single mothers say to their child, look, if you do something, the consequence is going to come on me, and it may actually stop the child doing something, knowing that actually it's not them that's going to suffer, but it's going to be the parents.
It just depends on how much the peer pressure is. I just want to get in a couple of calls. Claire from Oxfordshire, what's your thoughts on this? Are parents responsible ultimately for their children's actions?
Absolutely. I've been in a position that you're talking about now, where I've actually had to take responsibility for my own children, particularly my eldest daughter, where they were severely messed up by some other agency, and my daughter became violent, extremely violent from a very young age, which she suffered with ADHD and mental health, and she became very violent and was violent to other adults and children. And
what did you do as a parent?
I had to protect her. She was taking children out of school, out of primary school, and then setting fire to places. And
OK, Claire.
You have to take responsibility. You've got to protect.
I see the severity of the situation now. What did you do in order to take responsibility for your child's, let's call it, misbehaviour?
Well, firstly, I had to make sure she was barred from school. I had to keep her at home. Then she's gone to a boarding school, and she's set fire to that. You have to take responsibility.
OK, but did you seek out any sort of
other agencies?
Did you seek
out with multiple agencies?
Let me ask a question. Did you seek out any mental health professionals?
So she had play therapy, then she had more therapy. She was. You have to work with the police. You have to make sure that she's punished for the crimes that she's done.
Should you be punished?
She has the appropriate support.
Claire, should you have been punished rather than your daughter? Should you have been punished for her crimes?
I didn't do anything wrong to her. It wasn't me that caused the problem. She went through some difficult times, but she cannot get away with it.
Wilfred, what would you say to Claire then? Because Claire's saying, yes, you have to take responsibility, but she doesn't think she should be punished for her child's crimes.
Well, what I would say is this, is that, I mean, I don't know the nature of this course, but it looks as though Claire's been doing as much as she can to get her daughter to get help. That's all you could say. And so if the thing that annoys me...
And what point do you let go of that? Is there a cut-off age? You know, it's 16, is it then the child's responsibility?
18, I just think, 18, I just think, because the difficult age is between 14 and 18. That's when there's a real rebellion going on. And that's why I think you need to have really strict parenting or help. You know, so
in the form of police or mental health professionals,
professionals.
Schools?
You know, so you know, I've had teenagers. They are difficult, you know, and it's really difficult at that age. And so you've got to get help, whether that's family, and if it's a really severe problem, you have to get mental health help. But it is your responsibility. It ain't the state's responsibility.
And that's why I think case by case is important, not a blanket.
Claire, thank you very much for your call and for sharing your story as well. Millicent. What's for Middlesex? What's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I was just listening to hello everyone. I was listening to the gentleman that is saying that parents should be responsible if the child is under 18 years old.
Yes.
For you to say something like that, I don't understand you. You know, how many parents? I myself, I'm a single mom. I've become a single mom some time ago. Mm-hmm. And I have one child, he's here now, maybe listening to my conversation, who I tried everything, and he would still go out. I sometimes have to get the police involved to say, okay, my son left the house, he said he's coming in at this time, he hasn't arrived. Stressing myself, can't sleep, I have to go to work, I'm a nurse, I have to go to work the next day to work. It's very hard, so sometimes you try your best. I know parents who their child brought even gone in the house and they didn't even know. They are church people. The child go to church and didn't know, and they have mother and father. It's only when police came and kicked the door off they realized that their son was doing certain things. As you said, you know where your children went, but sometimes they say they're going to Jane's house. You call Jane, and Jane will answer and say yes, they're at their house, when they're not even there. Yeah,
well, this is the problem, isn't it? This is what I was trying to say earlier: is that kids can be deviant.
Yeah, but hold on. Look, what I'm trying to say is this: if you as a parent don't know what your child is doing,
because they're lying to you.
Well, the children lie. That's part of parenting. They lie. They are difficult. They are challenging.
So what should Millicent do?
So what I'm trying to say, Melissa, is that that if you cannot sort the problem out, who else is that left to? That's left to the police. That's left to other people. So I'm sorry that you are a single parent, but ultimately, the one person that needs to take responsibility for this is the parent. If you don't know what's going on, how in God's name do you expect other people to know?
Responsibility is different from taking punishment. You have to take responsibility, but not to get punished.
Yeah.
That's the distinction then,
Saleyha.
Do
we want Millicent to be sent to prison for something that her son, that she's doing her best, coming off an NHS nursing shift to be met by police at the door because of something that her son has done while she's at work? I mean, the other thing is, do we want to fit kids with tracking devices or something? I mean, parents are using apps to sort of track where their kids are going, but it is about the prosecution. When we look at the case in the US, I think that's black and white. That's wholly irresponsible, and she wasn't even sorry about it. To a degree, she was saying I wouldn't change a thing.
Well, she's saying she wouldn't have done anything any differently, which is surprising to hear.
Yes, that was disturbing.
Millicent, thank you very much for your call. Gina from London, what's your thoughts on this?
Hello, hi. I think Wilfred, if that's his name, Wilfred, has been very single-minded. You can't blame parents for, you can't really blame parents for what their children are doing. Children's got a mind of their own. He needs to know children aren't robots. Not just that, but the government, there's certain things you can't do with your kids. You can't discipline your kids anymore because the government has come in and said you can't smack them,
you can't
speak to them like that,
but you can discipline them, Gina.
So, and children are influenced by what's outside of the house. So, it's a really silly question, not a silly question, but I find it very frustrating and arrogant and ignorance, because you can't.
Sally,
I was brought up with two parents. My parents were extremely strict. And I rebelled, and I did lots of silly things as a child.
But Gina, okay, here's the flip side of it. If you knew that your parents could be punished for something that you did, would you think twice about it?
As a child, when you're doing silly things, you don't care. You just want to go out there and you want to have fun with your friends. You want to do silly things, and sometimes you learn from it.
Learning from your mistakes, sure, just as long as they're not too big. Sally.
And just going on from what Gina's saying, it's not even just from what kids are doing outside the home. Things can be happening inside the home. When we were younger, well, I don't know if when Gina was younger, but I didn't have social media, etc., influencing me from home. But they do now. All sorts of things being plotted and planned from, under the duvet. And I know that there are all sorts of parental safeguards and things like that. But, kids find ways around those. They do their this is their world. We are trying to catch up with their world, and we are behind that.
But I suppose in summary of this whole discussion, because we are going to have to wrap it up, let's just thank our heavens that we're not in America, and it's not very likely that a child is going to get hold of a gun anytime soon. Gina, thank you very much for your calls. Thanks for all your calls on this. We're going to have to move on after the break.